All right. So a lot of time people ask me, what are the main reasons for conflict and relationships breaking down? Now, there are a number of reasons for conflicts and the breakdown of personal and professional relationships. One of the main reason is the way people express themselves, the way people express their disagreement. And now, most of the time, when people are communicating on certain crucial topics or sensitive topics, or the conversations are difficult, their feelings, their emotions completely take over. And when feelings take over, they completely ignore the logic. So I have a few points here. Let me refer to them also. So emotions most of the time make the conversations unpleasant because logic has been ignored, and when people are conversing and they don't agree with something, emotions run high and the feelings take over, the conversations become unpleasant because that point of time a person is only focusing on how they're feeling, and they're trying desperately to go ahead and ensure that the other person understands their perspective. They do not look at the whole communication cycle. They don't look at the other elements and aspects of communication. At that point of time, they're just focusing on somehow getting the message across to the other person, which definitely leads to a conflict because you're only thinking from your way and from your perspective, and you're completely ignoring all the other elements of communication, which includes the way the other person is trying to understand their state of mind, their ability to understand the conversations. Another major reason, now this is one reason I've talked about a lot in my previous videos. Now, another reason, which is also a very critical reason for the breakdown of relationships and the conflicts happening, is that most of the time people are not assertive. I have seen that people do not speak up at the point when they are required to speak up. They tolerate, they compromise, but they do not speak up at that point of time. Communication established at the right time to address the right issue leads to a higher degree of resolve. Please understand this very carefully. Communication established at the right time, addressing the right issue and the relevant issue, leads to a higher degree of resolve. But if you address the same issue after some time, thinking that probably you'll prepare yourself and do it, the degree or the possibility of conflict is pretty higher. So it's very important to address any issue or any challenge as soon as possible at the right time. But why don't people do that? That's the question. Why don't they do that? One of the reasons is, and which has been very nicely explained in a book called Crucial Conversations, is that people prioritize goodwill over candor. Now, goodwill is the relationship. It's about your image. It's about the other person and your bonding. That is what people are trying to save, rather than being candor. And candor means being explicitly straightforward, being true, being genuine in your conversation, addressing the whole problem. And the reason is because they're afraid, they're scared, how will it be accepted or received by the other person, and will it influence or affect the relationship which they already have. Now, the relationship can be a personal and professional, but in any ways, if it gets affected, then obviously the consequences are not very pleasant. And because of that fear, people do not, they try not to be assertive at the right time. They try to either compromise or tolerate. But please understand, tolerating is not agreeing, and compromise is not accepting. They're not equivalent. So you might tolerate, you might accept, and you can keep on doing it for a certain time, but then you'll be fed up. Very soon you'll be fed up with tolerating and accepting. And I'm saying this keeping in mind both personal and professional relationships. And when that happens, and when your patience runs out, there would be an emotional outburst. Emotional outbursts, as we all know, are not pleasant. They're not good. They're the worst kind of response we can think of. And we don't want that. And when that happens, that leads to a drastic change in relationships, which eventually we all know leads to a breakdown. So if you don't want that to happen, then you need to focus on two things. First of all, how are you expressing your disagreement? And the second is, are you presenting it at the right time? And how are you presenting it? So try and learn to be assertive. Try to address the issues in your personal and professional relationships at the right time as soon as possible. And when you're doing that, please do that effectively. Don't let your emotions and feelings completely take over the conversations. Yes, you would have your moments when they would take over, but please be very aware and be apprised of how you are conversing and let your logic have a little bit of participation in this conversation.